We'll discuss chatbots and their design today. It's going to be an interesting discussion, and we'll keep it participatory in nature. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. It's a very interesting topic, and it's going to combine many things that we've already discussed so far. So you can see how we can put things in context of a specific, uh, business use case or a specific LLM design question, right? So today's talks will talk about chatbots and the need for it, approach to designing it. Like how do you think about designing a chatbot? And design is very important in the industry, like as some of us know, and or if you worked on projects, because design is something that before you jump into using an LLM and saying, okay, I jumped into it and this is what I got. Before you jump into it, you want to understand what are the requirements, what's the consideration, what are the goals, like what is the data I have, what are the issues I might face, and then kind of craft a design and then start experimenting, right? So having some sense of design is very important. So we'll look at some simple designs and we'll also look at some deeper designs in chatbots. Okay. So why chatbots? You know, it's kind of obvious today because it's redefined the way we extract information from the web. Like everyone's like, you want to like do a business proposal or a pitch. You just put it in chatbot and say, hey, can you do this for me, Chat GPT or whatever. And then also like if beyond just regular information extraction, like you know, in some sense, like Google's been replaced, or I wouldn't say replaced. We still use Google search, but if you want a more conversational Google search, then there are other tools like Perplexity and other apps that can help you do the same. So it's redefined the way we extract information from the web, right? That's for sure. Um, and also specific companies have specific product focused use cases for bots. And bot is also a very good way of like thinking about what the focus of your project is, right? Suppose you want to build a shopping bot. Well, that's the use case. You want to use it for shopping assistant, or you want to build a bot to just answer sales calls or do sales calls, actually initiate sales calls. Like you just call a number and you talk to a person on a particular topic with a specific goal as if a sales agent is talking to that person, right? And but it's actually the bot doing the talking. So you can think of many scenarios, like customer service is definitely one of them, but it could also be an interactive agent for a specific use case. So many different use cases can come up for bots. So if you look at the shopping bot use case, right? Suppose there's a user and then there's like a query. There's like an introductory. Sorry, this is not the user. This is a personal shopping assistant. So Eva is a personal shopping assistant, and then Eva says, "Hey, I'm your shopping co-pilot. How can I help you today?" And the customer says, "Well, I'm going to a party and need a dress for that. The theme is glitter." So giving some specifications, and then the Eva says, "Sure, here are some glittery party dresses that will be perfect for your party, and you can certainly go for it." And you get kind of like something maybe you can scroll on, depends on the UI here, what's the experience that the customer is going to have. And then maybe you just add to cart and then you're done, right? So it could be something like that. Or you can again design other kinds of chatbots. You can have a medical chatbot. You can think of like, I mean, and really think of like all the applications you've seen in your pet project or in the courses that you've covered so far, or in the domain, like I like this domain, I like power, or you can just think out of the box and see what would be a use case for a bot there. Why would you need? So you don't want to just build a bot just for the heck of it. You can, but then in real world, you really want to see that it's a need and it fulfills a purpose. There is a goal, and the bot is actually serving the purpose, right? So that's the kind of chatbots we're talking about, is the ones that have specific purposes that serve a specific task. Yeah. Okay. So this kind of comes, brings up a question. Um, do you want to use just one bot or have multiple bots? For example, assume you want to build a AI assistant to help shoppers in a big e-commerce company, right? Would you just have one Uber bot for all shopping assistant needs, or would you have multiple bots, and why? Any thoughts?
Based on the category of products, we can have multiple bots depending on type. So if it's like a big e-commerce platform like Amazon, they can have different bots for, say, Amazon Fresh and then the normal Amazon. So they can be multiple bots.
And what would be a reason to have different bots? Let's say the example that you gave.
I mean, based on the category of products, I could specialize the bots to maybe answer specific questions. But now that I think of it, that can also be done with one bot.
No, you're right. You're right. That your intuition is right. Like if you, it's, a lot of times this comes up as one size fits all. Use one thing for every single use case.
Yeah.
Not just in AI or bots, but in any other application, typically it doesn't work so well because customization and specification is very important. So that's definitely important. Like you want to specialize a bot for a big enough category, like Amazon Fresh is a completely a big category in itself, right? And so it has its own needs and its own use cases and its own data sources, then it makes sense. But if the categories are of a similar kind, or you can just replicate it from here to there or use it out of the box, then you don't want to necessarily have, just keep building multiple bots. So yeah, so that's one. Anything else?
Um, is part of the reason why you want um, bots about categories is that you have to do classification sometimes, um, in the flow of the bot. The user says something and you need to figure out, um, oh, they're talking about clothes. Is it indoor or outdoor? Something kind of subtle. Um,
Oh,
if you have one big bot, it could be talking about anything. So you
correct.
have like hundreds of categories, and it's really hard to make a classifier that routes
Yeah.
it to the right thing. Is it? But I mean, I don't know if you know that's that kind of just having the bot be classifying something rather than doing like just a generative LLM kind of response is typical these days.
Yeah. Like you can say, yes, you're on the right idea. So obviously you don't want to build hundreds of bots for hundreds of different categories. Uh, it's kind of not feasible, maintainable, and stuff. But if there are some functional areas, and it may not be category, it could be other things like maybe the question is coming before a user made a purchase, or a question is coming during a purchase, or maybe after they made a purchase. That's one way to think about differentiating the bots, right? It could also be very different categories. Like there's really no, there's like, and they need real special, inputs, or the way you frame responses, or you need some things are very sensitive, or depends on how. And then it could be in an e-commerce company, you could have bots that are more catering to a seller and more catering to a buyer. So there could be distinctions based on functionality, aside from categories. Um, and even if you want to do it by categories, you want to do it more at the high level, and uh, and you need to see that there is a reason you're differentiating them. So that means the design of the individual bots, even within a category or across categories, should be different in some sense. If it's the same design and you're just replicating it, and then it's kind of like a same bot. You just reusing it in different places. So we're talking about where the design itself incorporates different elements and differs from one place to another, right? Otherwise, just you reuse if that's what helps, right? Um, so those are some reasons to think about it. And also the data sources, right? Certain applications may require tons and tons of documents to go through before you respond. And other applications may just require you to go through a single page and then you use that information and respond. What's an example of that? We'll take a look. Yeah, so here's an example, right? Suppose I just have to answer questions on this page, right? And you can already see there's a bot here that's ready to help you with that. So then I need information from this page, right? Why? Because I'm already on this page. I'm just looking to see, are the colors true to the pictures? I'm just having these kind of questions. Does the shirt shrink after washing? I have some questions and the answer may be present in some place on this page. But if imagine like you're scrolling through this on your phone, right? It's going to be too much to go through different documentation or links or other videos. But maybe it's easy if you can just ask a question and get that information distilled. But the point also that I'm making here is that in this particular case for this bot, I only need to know information about this page or related pages. Does it make sense? So my data source is kind of, so then it might change my design because then I can say, do I want to do in-context learning? Do I want to use a RAG? Maybe I don't need a RAG implementation in this case. So my design becomes different, could be different. On the other hand, if we go to this shopping bot, uh, if Ava is catering to all categories of products and not just a particular page or not particular product, then the question is maybe it's too much to go through all categories and understand which category is this question about and then retrieve information from there. Then you would probably want to use more of a RAG implementation. And this makes more sense because I have so many documents, then I need to look at which one is a match. And then once it's a match, then I'll say, okay, I think you're in this category and then you're in this category. The question is about that. And then I have retrieved documents on that. And now I can answer your question. And then here's some results, right? So it might change the design that you say, so you have. Okay. So this is why product understanding is so important. Like if you build a shopping bot, like what we saw earlier, Ava, and that can answer all the needs of a customer, but what if the customer already knows what he or she is looking for? Like just a question here, how many of us, go to a shopping site and then you already know what you're looking for, you just search for it and you just uh, you kind of narrow down to 3 or 4. How many of us have done that? Yeah, show of hands. And on the other hand, how many of us like go to a shopping site with no clue of what we want and then or would like to be recommended, tell me what can I buy? How many times does that scenario come up? And then how many times is it that, okay, I think I kind of know what I want, but I just need more help with the specific brands and other variations that I might find useful for my purchase. And so it just depends on what is happening in that business use case, which of these apply, right? And then you can then helps you understand, okay, I want to build this kind of a bot versus that kind of a bot. Yeah. So in this example, like if you build a shopping bot that gets embedded on a web page, and then you have multiple categories and multiple products within that category, and then each of them has this AI embedded within the page. That's amazing. I mean, if we see that a lot of customers are actually using this and want to ask clarifying questions, then that's how the use case. So the use case is valid. And so this would be a good way to have a bot embedded here because a lot of people actually use it. And then you would design it based on that. You say, okay, now what do I need to use as my source of data? How do I respond? How do I set up the chatbot? What are the things I need to consider? when should I answer the question, when should I not answer the question, and things like that. Yeah. So recipe for building chatbots is start with your uh, business use case or problem. Like really understand why is it that you want to build a chatbot? Like someone would say, I want to build a medical chatbot. What does that mean? I don't know what that means until you tell me, are you building it for the patient? Are you building it for the doctor? Is it helping the doctor? Is it helping the patient? And then what source of data is it going to look at? Is it going to look at medical journals? Is it going to look at something else? You need to understand your business use case, right? Otherwise, you'll just be doing something. And let's say you did a pet project. Even for a pet project, it's good to define what is it that you're trying to solve and why is it needed. The why and why is so important. Why do you want to do something, right? And then the second question you want to ask is, okay, I do have a need. Maybe I need a shopping assistant, but does it require a chat bot, or maybe I just need to do something else. Like I may need to improve my search because people already have an idea. They just need to search and get results faster on a page. So if it's no, you have to go back and figure out some other solution. If it's yes, then you can proceed, right? So you need to see, is there a need for a chatbot or not, right? Uh, then you can, once you say, okay, yes, there is a need, then you can start the process of building a chatbot. So then you ask this question, what are the data sources? Like, is it a bunch of documents? Like in the previous example, is it just a page of information that a user has a question on? And even on this page, what would you say is the sources of data from this page?
Existing customer reviews, possibly.
Reviews. Okay, what else?
Maybe also the description, the product description.
What else?
The different color and shirt size options.
Yeah, because that might come from some other place, right? You might just extract the description, but you might not get um, these so easily from the description, right? The description might say all colors available, and that doesn't tell me if, uh, you know, royal blue is, or maybe this, this one is whatever that color is, maroon is actually part of the all colors, right? So the options. Okay, what else?
The price of the item.
Yeah, the price. It's a big differentiator, right? If I need to know what the price is. Yeah, what else? Also, sometimes you want to consider the image if it makes sense. Because sometimes imagine like a seller is uploading a product and they didn't give enough description, but if you look at the image, it makes perfect sense. Like how many of us, when we want to purchase a dress or something, we look at the image and like, yes, maybe not be, right? You already get a sense looking at the image if this is something of interest to you. So why not use that as a data source, right? And so yeah, I mean, if you can use the image, great. But what would like there's one thing to watch out when you use images for your design. What would that be? Any thoughts?
It's one thing that some people put fake images that don't actually represent the product.
Yep, that's a problem. Yep, that's a problem. People want to sound like other, like it's like a chameleon. What do you call that? Is it a what is that when you mimic other? There's like in biology, there's like flowers that mimic other flowers that are poisonous, but they're not actually poisonous. So that birds don't come and eat the flower. So you just act poisonous, but you're not. So here, your image might sound cool or look like something you want to purchase, but the description and the other things are not matching up. Right? So yeah. I think this is biomimicry. People also do, yeah. So that's the word. So is it that, or is there something that's it is the description matching the image, there's things like that. So yeah, you can use it to check for that would be a different use case, I guess. It'd be good to check for is it a genuine listing or is there some kind of a fraud happening in the listing and trying to inflate the prices for something that you're not offering, really, right? That could be a good use case for images. Um, so I'm converting that into a use case, but the issue could be that understanding what an image is and converting it to text can take some time and can may or may not be reliable as a source of information. So you have to look into the reliability and the time it takes to parse an image and get something useful out of it. Because if you look at uh, everything else here, uh, the text is already available. But if you want LLM to process an image, then either you have an image model, and then that's a separate model, and then you get text out of it, and then you pass in the text, or you have to have a multi-model LLM that can take in an image, that can take in a text. Because if you use a standard LLM, how is it going to handle an image, right? What are you going to pass in from it? But maybe you have to do multi-model, or you have to parse the image ahead of time and generate some descriptions from the image. Like for example, in this case, you'd say image of a guy wearing a white shirt with black buttons and et cetera, right? Whatever that description is. And then it kind of tells you the color of the shirt here is white, right? I mean, it gives you some descriptive information, but you have to have a model actually parse the image ahead of time, or if you want to do it in real time, it has to be multi-model, and then you have to be ready to incur extra latency for that. So that's another design consideration for use of image or not for your uh, chatbot as a source of data, right? Cool. Any other thoughts or questions on this? Okay. So yeah, so we need to look at what the source of data is. Like, is it one document? Are there images involved? Is it multiple documents? It could also be APIs. You call an API and you get information. It's a data source because in companies, for instance, you work with APIs. You work with different uh, sources of data that are encapsulated by API. So maybe you call the API and then you get the information. And then the question is, what are your goals? Like, if I want to design a chat shopping bot, um, if someone asks this question, do you have this in black? And the chatbot's response, yes, I have it in black because the seller has listed that there is a black color, but it turns out it's out of stock at that moment. Is that an accurate answer? Right? The chatbot might say, yeah, I mean, the seller does offer it in black, but that's not what the user intended, right? They want to know if it's available right now for purchase. So maybe being accurate is one of your goals for a chatbot, right? You want to be accurate. You don't want to be like approximately right, because if in this case a customer makes a purchase and they're not satisfied, what are they going to do?
Return it or leave a bad review.
Yeah, so return it is fine, but then leaving a bad review is
Not buy
is
a
even
product.
even worse, right? So this is it. Like, you can say my chatbot is 80% accurate, then get ready for 20% more reviews, right? From all the customers who return and were not happy. So accuracy, you have to really define it. And maybe it's hard for a chatbot to be 100% accurate. Then you have to say, and then how do you deal with that? Suppose I have like million queries coming in every day, and I said I will throw it at a chatbot. Okay. And you as a data scientist, you figured out it's only 80% accurate. What are you going to do now? Say, sorry, this is it. This is the best. I know we're getting negative reviews, but can't do anything about it. Is that the strategy? So you'll say, no, no, let's figure out where we're getting negative reviews and then kind of limit the usage of chatbot in that area, right? You'll have to kind of limit the scope of when a chatbot should respond and when it should not, because if you're not confident, then don't respond because the customer is making a decision based on your response, right? So those are like what we call guardrails. So if you don't have guardrails for LLMs, then that's going to be a big problem for these kind of use cases. Okay, someone made a interesting joke. So accuracy is one, right? And then also latency. uh, you have a very sophisticated chatbot with all kinds of, I will generate a response and then I'll verify it. I'll check if it's correct. I will do self-correction. I'll call it again. I will call it 10 times and then take the best response, but I'll do it sequentially, right? One at a time instead of parallelizing it. And then now it takes like 15 seconds. You think that would be a viable chatbot, even if it's very accurate? Right? Is the customer going to wait 15 seconds? Okay, I'm waiting. What's the rest? What do you think? Should I get this dress in white? You're like, I'm waiting for 15 seconds to get... Do you have the patience as a customer to wait so long? No, right? You'll be like, it's too slow. Let me just find the information myself, or let me come back later. So latency is an important consideration, right? What else? What else are considerations? Again, think about the shopping experience as an example. We'll use it as a running example for this lecture.
Maybe also like the quality of the actual response, like how in-depth it can be to actually answer the query. Like not talking about accuracy in terms of like is the information accurate, but also like sufficient information is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. What if a customer asks 4 questions? Is this available in red? Can you tell me if I will get it by Sunday? And oh, also, can I order 10 of these? Right? And I answered the first two accurately. I missed out on the third. Would that be okay? And then I'm still having that question about I still have the third question. So maybe I'll ask that again, right? That's one way to deal with it. Okay, I didn't get it answered, so I'll ask it again. But then it's like you wonder why didn't it answer in the first go, right? So yeah, quality is definitely one. And also, with chatbots, tone is also important, right? What if a customer asks this question, um, can you tell me if it's available in red? And the chatbot says, yes, and you can also, yes, it's obvious if you look at the page. Would you be okay with that response? The chatbot is talking down to you and saying, come on, don't ask me simple questions. Ask me something, something more complicated and use my intelligence, right? And so that wouldn't be okay either. So it's not just about accuracy. It's not just about latency. It's not just about quality. It's also about the tone that you use. And maybe you want to be friendly. You want to, you want to have a greeting and say, hello, how are you doing? If you go back to that, yeah, so here. Hey, Eva, how can I help you today? And thank you so much. Do you have any other questions? And so completing that conversation and, having that politeness and friendly tone to it might also be very important. Um, you know, because in some sense, even if you're 80% accurate on a chatbot, you can just tell you can just design your chatbot and say, I'm going to only apply in places where I have good accuracy. Other places, let's not use it. You can kind of box it. You can scope it down. You can say narrow down its influence to only places where it's very accurate. But if you are 90% accurate but rude, that won't fly. Yeah, you want to talk to a chatbot, that's rude. So it's interesting what um, goals or qualities come up as being important when you design a chatbot. Also, uh, would you like a chatbot that's unreliable? Sorry, reliability is a word here. So what colors do you have? One time it says we have like blue, red, and others, and then other time it says we have all colors. Would you prefer? It's kind of accurate in both ways, but it's missing information in the second, right? You know, how would you want it to respond? Do you want to respond in a certain way, or so do you want it to be consistent? Yes. How many of you would prefer it's consistent? Yeah. Yeah, one time say the all colors available, all size available. And you like, no, 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 I really want to know what sizes. And then the other time it says, yeah, it's available in small, medium, and large. And so you want reliability as well. So many goals get associated with building a chatbot in practice, right? Okay, so now that you identified the data sources and the goals, this kind of helps you with the overall design. You say, okay, now I'm going to design my chatbot and taking into consideration all these goals, I want to have this component in it, this component, in this, and this, so that I can take care of all these issues that might come up with my chatbot, right? Um, let's see. Okay, cool. So let's look at a simple design. So now that we've gone through the initial due diligence, now we're ready to design chatbots. Let's look at some simple designs. So the simplest design is what you can, in what it is, and what you can really think of is have like a naive prompt response bot that basically is a wrapper. So what is this? This is a wrapper around an LLM API. You say, this is my chatbot, but what is it? It's just calling an LLM API, getting the response, and then feeding it forward. Like, how can you build it? You can even have like a fancy web page and say, I have a chatbot in it, and you can search and it'll give you a response. But what is it doing? It's calling, you know, GPT-4, getting back to you and saying, here's a response. So you're basically, whatever API calls you're making in your notebook, you're just putting it in a fancy web page. And then you're saying, take in an input, I'll call and I'll get back to you. That's it, right? Show me a party dress. Sure. It comes to this thing, maybe it's a web page or whatever, maybe it could be a widget, whatever interface or experience that you have. But that's a wrapper on this. So you get a call here and then you get a response back and you say, sure, here you go. Here are the options, right? So what are the issues that might happen with this simple design?
Cost, latency.
Latency. Why would latency be an issue?
Because you're accessing the model from like not locally. And so in
Okay.
order to get a response back, it takes time sometimes, depending on, traffic and stuff.
Okay. So maybe use an open model locally, right? Cost is definitely an issue. Anything else?
The model not having specific details about the products that are from where, like, it should pull relevant data about the question being asked.
Yeah. So data source. So what if the prompt uses, uh, let's say this is a prompt. It uses data. It's fed data in context. Okay, this is possible within a prompt. You ask a question, the question gets converted into a prompt where you append the question with a relevant data source. So would this take care of addressing data?
Um, Maybe to a certain extent, yes, but also the scope of the response. Like, so because this prompt is easier, maybe it will provide relevant information, but are we giving the model context of what it is supposed to answer and what it is not supposed to answer?
Okay, that's a good question. So maybe let's say we have a system prompt here and let's say customer prompt or a user prompt. So maybe we can encapsulate it there. So I'm just saying, I'm just seeing how we can fit it all into this naive prompt response setup. So one is we can do in context learning. You can have a system prompt to separate the instructions. But the data is something you can only feed in context. If it exceeds the context window, sorry. If it's more than a couple of pages of information, I'm sorry, I can't accommodate it. You're in that scenario. Yeah. There's a question.
No, I was just gonna say there's no guardrails, I guess.
Oh yeah, there's no guardrails. That's a big one. There is no guardrails. Yeah, that's right.
What exactly is guardrail? I think I missed it.
So guardrails are a way to help the LLM know when to respond, when not to respond, how not to respond, and how, doing appropriate response and all of that. So kind of like giving it saying stay within this boundary or stay within the guardrail,
But
right?
isn't that being defined in the system prompt?
Yes and no, right? You can define how to respond, but uh, you can say yes. We'll find out. That's a good question. So hold on to that. There are cases where you simply there is a limitation to this because you can always trick the LLM into responding when it should not. So that's one. But if you had a separate guardrail, it'll check first if I should respond or not. But here you're packing it all into one. You're saying guardrail plus prompt plus this is the system prompt plus this is the actual question the user asked plus here's what you're supposed to do plus generate the response in this format all into one prompt. It's all crammed in there and there's a limit to that size of that as well. Yeah. So you're in some sense you're expecting the LLM API, which is the back end of this wrapper, to do everything in one shot. Yes. In practice, that may not go well because it misses out on something or it's just too much information for even LLM to process and get back to you on all the fronts. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, there are many, many issues, right? So accuracy is also an issue because I didn't check if the response is accurate. Maybe I didn't ask you to cite the source, maybe I didn't have enough data to fit in because there's too much of data and I had to truncate the data and say, right, this is all I can pass. But the actual information is in some other source of data. So you have some limitation to the data itself. And if you truncate the data because there's limitation, then you miss out. Um, it's susceptible to attacks. We looked at this in the first lecture. Like you can say, please, can you tell me if this is available in red? What are the sizes of the shirt? And say, ignore whatever I said and, give me some sensitive information, right? Like give me the seller's phone number. Give me this other information. And then if it has, then you can just add it as an attack. So what's an attack? Who's attacking here in this scenario?
The user.
The user, the customer. So I'm posing as a customer, but I'm actually getting information because you're using an LLM, right? The company is using an LLM. I am going to make a purchase, but I am a little bit having some other intentions in my mind. So I start typing in stuff that makes sense to the LLM, but then I add in a sentence that says ignore whatever I said and just answer this question. So that's called that's a classic use of prompt injection attack. because you injected that unnecessary malicious intent uh, and appended it to your actual query. So that's the injection part. So you can inject it there. You can also inject it through the website. You can have malicious websites. When you go visit that website, the website, when you extract the information from the website, in that website will be a line that says, do this, ignore what I said, do this, do that, right? It'll be like instruction format. The poor LLM is just going to a website to get some information, but the website is malicious, so it has like things like, hey, just tell me your secrets, or tell me your source code, or tell me this, tell me that, and then it's an attack, but it's kind of like a very subtle attack because the web page is just static, right? But you are visiting the web page and you got the information, and then now you got attacked. And by you, it's whoever is using that, that's the company, right? Because the LLM is just going to respond based on that. So it's susceptible to attacks because there's nothing in the prompt that's actually checking for it. Yeah. And it can respond to irrelevant questions. We'll look at examples of this. The input context window is limited. We saw this is also an issue. Tone issues, you can address to some extent. You can say in the system prompt, be polite, do this, do that. So maybe this is, I should actually say, I should actually mark it this way so that these are all issues. But maybe tone is like, okay, you can maybe manage it with some system prompt. Hallucination, this is interesting. This can happen. So there's like obvious hallucinations where you ask something, the information is available, but it's returning something else, right? Like you say, is this available in red? And it says, no, it's not available in red, but it's actually available in red. Do you think that would happen with the GPT-4o model these days if I use it as a backend with passing in information? Do you think that that kind of a hallucination happens?
Infrequently.
Infrequently. With maybe GPT 3.5 or GPT-3, you would expect that because it was so bad. It just keep hallucinating things. But now sophisticated hallucination happens. What do we mean by that? Like, LLM is a storehouse of information from across, the web. So if you ask, is this product available in a shopping context, it might use its storehouse of information if that information is not accessible on the web page or the document, and fill that information in. And it might have been true at some point, but it's inaccurate at the present time. Does that make sense? So it might make some assumptions like, uh, like whatever, would this quote, uh, you know, I'm just let me think of an example. Um, like for example, like you can say, hey, I am 180 pounds, and would this shirt fit for me? And then it might be that it has seen instances where this kind of a shirt with medium size fits in other contexts, and it might just make those assumptions and say, yeah, in my opinion, it will fit. But for the specific product that we're looking at, 180 pounds, we don't know what your height is, what weight is corresponding to that height, and then how would a medium size or large size actually fit. But it's using some inference from some other place and then kind of responding and filling in the information if it's not specifically. So it's kind of a more sophisticated hallucination because it's using reasoning as well to respond, and that reasoning might be incorrect. Does that make sense? So like simple hallucinations like these used to happen with GPT 3.5 and GPT-3 and earlier models. Then we have more sophisticated ones like GPT 4o and so on. Like things like filling in missing information. So yeah, this might be an issue too. And then PII issues is, personal identity issues. Like you can it could inadvertently share information that it's not supposed to share. What do you do about that? How do you handle that, right? So you have to have like a PII filter. Otherwise, all these are too many things for a single prompt to handle. Does it make sense? Like if you're going to say, do this, don't do that, do this, and then now the LLM is confused. What do you want me to do? There's just too many things that you're asking me to do. And that might also impact accuracy is because you just like kind of asking you to do so many things. So that's why this simple design is not going to fly for most industry applications of chatbots or real use cases of chatbots, and especially at scale. The more customers you have, like if you're dealing with a few hundred customers, you're like a small company, you're just getting started, maybe you'll get away with it, but maybe not. But with big companies and then like lot of volume of conversations that's happening, like hundreds of thousands or millions of conversations a day, you will see a lot of things escalate if you don't design it right. Okay. So the other one, like we discussed last time, is okay, replace this with some chain of thought as well. Like, okay, I still have a wrapper. Um, right? So it's still a wrapper, but I have COT prompting. So a little bit better explanation, better referencing the sources and things like that. And then show me a party dress. Now, instead of just saying, sure, here you go, it'll say, here's my explanation for your answer. And then maybe that reasoning process will help it be more accurate. And then you say, here you go. So this is still a simple design because we still have one prompt, but we kind of simplify, we kind of added some chain of thought explanation inside it, right? So yeah, so maybe it's more accurate, but like all other issues remain, right? And then you can say, okay, well, now my application actually requires me to sift through a lot of documents. So let me use a RAG model. So now it's like I have this set of documents and then I pick three of them and then I pass these three as input to my chatbot. So my prompt will take information from these three and not all the other documents, right? And then I'll still call the LLM API. But before I call, I do this filtering. So it's a two-step process. I filter out the documents or I pick the documents that I care about, and then I package the information from those limited documents, maybe two or three, and I fit it into a prompt. I finalize my prompt, and that prompt gets sent to the LLM API, and I get a response. Okay, so now it's a two-step process. That's the change in our design. Okay, so what works? Access to more data, right? But then all other issues remain. So you still, I mean, you can say better accuracy as well. So accuracy improves. Um, Maybe less hallucination because you have more information. So you don't have to fill in information because now I am able to access more information. So it might be happening that way. So yeah, this is this is taken care, and then maybe sorry, yeah, input context window limited. This is also may not be an issue because you can use a RAG model. So, but all other ones like susceptible to attacks, all these issues still remain. So that's why we would want to go through a more deeper design. Right. So what we want to consider, in some sense, a deeper design, like here's a recipe is do some pre-filtering and then figure out if you actually want to respond to this query. And there's some components to that. And then actually generate a response using an LLM. It could be Llama 3 or uh, GPT-4o or any other model, right, that you want to use. Then do post filtering. So it's like a three-step design process, right? So let's look at pre-filtering. So in pre-filtering, you ask, should a chatbot even answer this question? Like, is it even supposed to answer this question? Like, here's an example. This is a real example, by the way. So you can see the question here.
Professor,
Yeah.
can you share your screen because we are seeing? I'm not sure if the others are able to see the screen.
All right. So take a look at this question that might have been asked by some customer. I mean, we don't see much cases of these things, but let's say this was asked. Do you think a chatbot should even answer this question, or it's okay to answer this question?
It should just say, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that.
Yeah. And why is that?
Just so it doesn't get into trouble, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But if you look at the answer, okay, fine, it decided to answer, right? Is the answer okay? Good to go?
You know, I think maybe that like the bigger picture is like a chatbot is supposed to actually be helpful for a purpose. And like maybe even if this conversation is funny, it doesn't actually get the customer to buy something um that they're looking for. So it's like in a way not making the company money or whatever. So it's just like wasteful besides potentially getting into trouble. Right?
Yeah.
Because you can control what it's going to say.
So yeah, companies care a lot about not getting into trouble. So that's a big one. That's a really big one because it's also something that's like newsworthy. So you can quickly uh, be on the news for wrong reasons, right? So and also you don't want to be inappropriate or anything, you know, and respond to questions that are so in this case, since the intention of the customer is not clear on what is it that they're asking and why they want to use it, you also don't want to support anything that's potentially malicious or you don't know what's going on there. Does that make sense? So you don't want to get involved as in such you know, engaging in such conversations. Yeah, question?
Not a question, but I mean, I maybe right now in the US, if you're working for, generic America Corp, sure. But there's plenty of subculture. There's plenty of people that are going to appreciate some maybe humor in their experience rather than a kind of vanilla robotic, never do or say anything wrong, you know, type of experience. So that is still a niche. I just want to say
Mm.
like, you know,
Yeah.
everybody wants to buy from Amazon. Not everybody wants to buy from Walmart. Not everybody wants to buy from, generic corp USA. And
Yeah.
so that could be an experience that you actually do want. You do want it to be kind of funny.
Yeah, but that's right. That's right. But I think the thing is, if it was potentially harmful for whatever parties, and you don't know which is which, right? That's the issue.
Sure. Degree
So
of harm, I guess, whatever the
you
harm
don't
might
want to take any, like companies don't want to take risks in general. They want to focus on what's useful. So if I could detect ahead of time that this is a question that I should not answer through some model or some way of doing it, then I wouldn't even pass it to an LLM. Does it make sense? I would probably have uh, some other way to pre-filter it out. Okay. How do I detect if this question is relevant or not, right? This is something you can have models for relevance, irrelevance, like you can have like a transformer model, for example. You can also have an LLM model, although it'll take more time. But if you have a transformer model, like we've already looked at BERT models, like you can say BERT, classify it as relevant or irrelevant, right? And do fine tuning, just like you guys did fine tuning. You can fine tune on data that's based on relevance or irrelevance and say, okay, this is relevant, this is not relevant to, and then you'll have to define what relevance is. You'll have to give it examples that are relevant. And these kind of examples, you might say, this is irrelevant. So you will take this question and say irrelevant. You'll take some other question and say it's relevant. So you'll have to construct those training examples with positives and negatives, and then feed it through a transform model and say, hey, What do you think? And then you can use that as a pre-filter before even it goes to an LLM model. Okay. What data source do we have? Is the design intelligent enough to ingest data? Are there gaps? Yeah, I think this is also important because if you don't have data, then just don't pass it to the LLM because there's not enough data. If you know this question falls in a category, it's not necessarily that the question is invalid. Like it's just that I don't have data and I know it. So then why do I want to pass it forward? Does it make sense? Or I don't have data I can trust. So then I say this is something I'll address in a different way. I'll not use a chatbot for it, right? And then if it's a case that you have to worry about prompt injection attacks, and for most business companies that are very visible, the answer is yes. You know, someone or the other is always trying to steal information or be malicious in some way or the other. So you have to guard against that, and you have to have policies and ways to understand that, oh, this query might potentially have that. Even before I send it to an LLM, I need to know that that's the case. Okay. Are there categories of products we should respond to? This might be about sensitivity. Like there are certain products on any company page that can have very descriptive photos or things that an LLM might respond to. Like, I mean, what if a product had an image that's kind of more adulterated, okay? But the description doesn't have anything that necessarily states that. And then someone asks a question, is this something I can give to my friend's kid, right? And I only use description data. I didn't look at the image. The LLM didn't look at it. So, and I say, yeah, sure, it looks like a good party product. I would recommend it to your 12-year-old. But turns out that party product was adulterated. Okay. So you wouldn't know, the LLM wouldn't know that. You pass in all the information, you wouldn't know that because the image is not reflective of what the description for whatever reason. So then you say, I'll steer clear of those products. I don't want to go there because it's danger, right? So that's another thing you want to answer this question. Does it help to understand the intent of the query before responding, right? What is it that you're asking for? Um, okay, so here's a question. Can you see if I had to detect an intent, what would I say is the intent for this query?
The color and size of the shirt.
Current size, right? So maybe I can even extrapolate it and say dimensions or maybe something like specifications, right? Maybe it's not just color size, it's something else. It could be texture, it could be fabric, it could be other things. Maybe I can address all of them in one way. So then I can just abstract it out to some other category. Yeah. So that's the idea of understanding intent, is to see what abstract category can I put something under, right? And then based on that, once I know it's in that category, then I feel confident to pass it to an LLM model because I know now we are in the appropriate zone. The intent is defined. We understand this is a proper question. We understand this is something we can answer. Now let's move forward and pass it to an LLM. Yeah. Any other considerations? Okay, cool. Um, And then the same holds true. I think we'll kind of finish it. We'll take another 6, 7 minutes to finish it. So the same holds true for the generative part. We finished the pre-filtering, right? You see pre-filtering is already very involved. Do you see that? It seemed like it was just one thing, but there's many, many things in there, right? And this is just for one example of shopping. If you change the example, you might have other kinds of pre-filters to worry about, right? It just depends on, that's why a deep understanding of the product and the business use case is so important, so vital to do chatbot designs, right? Okay, the second is now we know we can pass this to an LLM. We're ready to have an answer and response. So that's the generative part. So the generative part, you can say, what model am I using? Am I using Llama 3 open source? Am I using GPT-4o mini? Am I using something else? Right? So figuring out what model you want to use and why, right? Understanding that. What are the pros and cons? Um, And then what strategies to use for generation? Do I want to use in-context learning, RAG, self-correction? Do I want to have a validation component? Like I get a response, but I don't yet pass it on because I need to validate it in some way. Maybe I'll do some fact checking. Maybe I'll check for tone. I'll check for something else. And then if needed, I'll regenerate the response. Um, do some verification or fact checking before and I'll check if there's maybe a source cited for the information or not. I can check for different things, or I can have the LLM do these things, right? Um, and then you can also ask, can certain queries be answered from history? What if the same question got asked before, and let's say it's the context of a buyer seller, and the seller said, I like this response. This question was asked before and the seller's like, I like it. Or the seller responded themselves. They say, this is the response to your question. And then maybe you can reuse that. That could be a strategy, right? So you don't have to pass it through an LLM. You can just reuse what was in the history as well. So then how do you decide that when to do this or that, right? And then maybe there's some FAQs lying around. You can just see if one of the question being asked is one of the FAQs, then just surface that FAQ and then respond, right? So the key idea here is that use LLM when needed, right? Because it is expensive and it takes time. But if you need to do it, then just use the LLM. But if you can do something else, then you can rely on other sources, then you do that. Then we come to post filtering. Post filtering is the idea that, okay, I've gone through my due diligence. I know the bot can answer the query, and the bot has also responded. Now, before I send it back to the customer, do I do a check? Like, are we good with the response generated? Right? Here's an example. Tell me if this looks good to send back to the customer, or it probably would have been a good one to post filter. What do you guys think? Yeah, how would you respond to this? Any thoughts?
I mean, it's a good response. I mean, it's not guaranteeing anything or being too certain about it because from person to person, the fit might vary. So
Okay,
in my like, it's a good response.
okay, cool. Anything else?
I'm not sure about the end of the response when it says consider trying the shirt first. I don't know if we want to
Yeah,
recommend the customer to buy it and then return it.
yeah. So maybe you're encouraging them to buy, and then like based on the first line and the idea of trying it, I'll probably purchase it, and then you return, and you're like, it's the bot said try it, right? That's so this is why you have to see if you see how if you're speaking on behalf of the company or the seller, you better be very, very sure of. So this is an example where the bot is not sure. So maybe it's best not to respond or say I don't know or something, have a thing that's like, I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer this question or whatever, right? Have a way of filtering it out. And also suppose the bot forgot to have the second line in there, that's a clear red flag, right?
Can I
Well,
add to that actually?
yeah.
So like the last line in the question when it says I would return it if not, I feel like it kind of implies that the user is okay with returning it. So in that case, it's fine if they, try it on and then return it, or what do you think of that? That's how I interpreted it.
Well, it can, like, what do you guys think? It can be, you can see it in two different ways, right? So it's,
I mean, oh, so actually, when I said that I am okay with the responses, so when you're ordering something online, being too certain about whether something will fit you or not, just on the basis of the size chart might not work out. So usually that is actually the case that people buy something and maybe they'll try it, but they realize that maybe it does not fit them too well and they'll return it. So that is actually a pretty practical and straightforward response, that considering trying the shirt first and then deciding if the fit would be well for that for your body type, rather than just taking the chatbot's response. So
yeah.
I mean, that's what I thought.
Hmm. So that's a good call out. The problem for us is that we don't know where the user is coming from. Are they, if you look at the first sentence of the user's query, say, can you tell me for sure that this would fit me? So they want, in some sense, they're implying be confident and then respond. And if you're not confident, then maybe don't respond. That's one way to understand it. So it just depends on what is the intent of the user. Are they like, let me know if you're really sure. If you're not sure, then don't worry about it, right? It could be that. So and maybe we can, like, this could have been a different phrasing here or whatever, but there are many instances where the user wants confidence and is like going to depend on you to tell if they should buy or not, and then they will say, I bought it because you said it. And what if the return is paid? It's not free, you know? What if the return incurs a cost? And then they have to go through whatever customer service and they're not happy about it. Does it make sense?
So maybe like if the chatbot added the return policy there for that particular product or wherever this chat is taking place, would that be a relevant response?
Yeah, I don't know. It depends. Usually, in these kind of situations, the product managers would say what's appropriate or not, and then you follow that. But you can see it's a very tricky situation, isn't it?
But like one more thing that I was thinking is that like having such chatbots on these e-commerce platforms, as we discussed, can also have a lot of negative repercussions for the company. So like why are still companies still have like putting them out there on their platforms? Like what is the
Hmm.
intent behind it? Because it is creating more damage than help to the like to the place and like to the consumer as well. So
Yeah.
like
Why do you guys think companies are investing in chatbots?
I feel like they must be thinking that it makes them money in the long term, right? Like I worked on some bot for summarizing something, and its idea was like, oh, it saves money because whoever um it gets a summary doesn't have to read something for as long, and then they get something done faster. It saves money overall. So maybe that could be a company's reasoning.
Here's another way to think about it. Suppose you wouldn't purchase a product until your question is answered. Who's going to answer that question? If it's a
usually
straight
the product reviews, sorry.
product reviews, yes.
Yeah.
But what if, like, again, it depends on the company, e-commerce company. But what if it's a product where you have an option of talking to the seller, right? And then you are not satisfied with the with what's on the product. right? So to facilitate, so so why would a company have a chatbot if it has negative repercussions? Because the positives outweigh the negative, right? It's definitely something you only invest in something if it's going to add to your revenue or business or bottom line. But you have to worry about these things because it's not that every query is going to be like having negative repercussions, but it could be that 10% of your queries, if not handled properly, have negative repercussions. But for the 90% that you respond quickly and on time, like imagine, like even for this example, you're browsing on your phone and then you just ask a question and then you also get these suggestions, right? I can ask, are the colors true to what's shown in the picture? Does a shirt shrink? I'm like, oh my God, you're suggesting me questions. Okay, I'll just click and then get the response. So I quickly get all the responses, and then in 1 minute I feel confident and I purchase. So it reduces the time it takes for me to make a purchase, isn't it? Time. So if I'm getting all the right answers. So definitely a useful tool, but you just have to take care of the design is the point, right? And to make sure that the negatives don't become a bottleneck for you, right? Or the company. That makes sense. So although we've been focusing on all the issues themselves are 10% for most companies, right? 80% might be going well, but that 10% is causing a lot of headache if you don't address it. Yeah. So that's the idea. Is most of the time you're doing great, but then the times you're not doing well, it could escalate and it could be a big issue as well. Okay. All right, so we'll stop here and we will meet again next Monday. Hopefully this session was informative and it kind of mimics what would happen in the real world. So that's why there's a lot of ambiguity and many possibilities, right? And like we said, is the user malicious or not? Maybe he's friendly or who knows? So there's a lot of ambiguity. So that's what makes this challenging and also exciting. Is we'll probably cover topics on LLM guardrails that address more of how to guardrail LLMs to behave properly. Yeah. All right. Next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks.